All right, just got back from theaters with Man of Steel, and far, far better than I was expecting it to be. It was such a well told story, and I'm going to be giving away a lot of spoilers in this review. I can't help it. Really, I had a lot of worries when going into theaters to see it, mainly because Superman is probably the most predictable superhero of all of the comic heroes, and which is showed in the previous Superman films. There was a lot of worry going on before I saw the film, but it not only beat expectations, it went way beyond them. Christopher Nolan, who handled the story, wrote a very good story. This is probably the most down to earth story in Superman's long history with film. One of the things I really credit Christopher Nolan for doing was bringing the Superman character a little more down to earth. It's not as campy as the previous Superman films. It's not as goofy. It's very serious from start to finish. And Chris Nolan does a much better job writing the backstory of Superman. That was another worry from fans, was that the backstory might play a little bit too much into the film. It might dwarf the entire film. There was a lot of worry that it was going to be like maybe 70% backstory and 30% Superman, which other films have done too. But that's not the case here. Again, spoilers. The entire Superman backstory is mainly told in flashback, except for the beginning where it's on Krypton. And Krypton is well told. It's very well told. I am very pleased with how they wrote it. They developed the parents very well. They developed Zod very well in the beginning. And just the way they did it with the destruction of Krypton was very well done and very well written, and Zack Snyder did a great job with the direction. From there, we get to see these various flashbacks of Superman, growing up as a kid. It's a bit out of order in areas, but it's still very well told. Henry Cavill, who plays Superman, far better than I thought he was going to be. There was definitely a lot of worry because, at first, when he was first cast, he didn't have, the big muscular build. He was still a really fit guy, but, he wasn't the big muscular guy that you would expect Superman to be. He really bulked up for this film, and his acting really proved that he fit the role. And Amy Adams also surprised me as Lois Lane. When she was cast, I was like, really? All due respect to Amy Adams, I just didn't think she fit into the role as Lois Lane. But she proved to be very good. In long story short, the casting of the film worked out much better than a lot of people thought it was going to. And the story, with Zod and all that, if there's anything, there are a couple negatives with the film, particularly going back to how predictable Superman is. That was something that they really couldn't avoid with the film. Like, Superman is always victorious. Right from the beginning, you always knew that Superman was going to be, he was going to win in the end. It's not like Batman, with Chris Nolan's Dark Knight franchise. It's not like that where, you second guess, is Batman going to win? Especially with The Dark Knight Rises, after the first fight with Bane, you start second guessing, is Batman going to win this fight, or is it going to be someone else who wins it? With Superman, right from the beginning, Superman's going to win this entire thing. And if I had to say anything negative about the Superman comics in general, is that its villains are very cliche. Granted, the age of Superman, when it was made, that kind of tells how that came about. But General Zod, he always makes me laugh. He's like that. He's the most cliched villain that I think I've seen in comic films yet. Especially the way they made him. Like in the very beginning, again, I'm going to be giving away spoilers here. In the very beginning, Superman's father slashes Zod's eye, and he has this scar in his eye, and that just makes me laugh. It's like, I can't believe they did that. They put a scar in his eye. That's cliche. But for some reason the cliche works with Superman. It's something that really only works with that character. He can get away with the cliche, and Man of Steel is no different. Um, Another really big negative that I had with the film was, sadly, the action. This is easily the most action-packed Superman of the entire franchise. It even eclipses Superman Returns, which had a fair amount of action itself. But that ends up being kind of a double-edged sword, especially with all the CG that has to go with it. And this is definitely proves to be different than Chris Nolan's Dark Knight franchise, because where Chris Nolan went for realism and less CGI, Superman, you can't avoid it. You have to do a lot of CGI. It winds up being a problem, especially with some of the action scenes, because it's like CG on top of CG in areas. So there are moments on screen where you can't really tell what the hell's going on, because there's just so much CG going on that you can't really tell what's going on the big screen. That's kind of a problem, but overall, the action is handled well, especially the final fight between Superman and Zod. However, one of the big positives about this film is its lack of comedy. They kept it from being campy. Like, this isn't the movie that, like the previous ones where Superman, when he was not Superman, he was Clark Kent with the glasses acting goofy. That's not there. They hint at it towards the end of the film. Again, spoiler, I do apologize. But they keep the comedy to a minimum, to a very brief minimum. Like, it's more subtle this time and really more human, and really more heartfelt, I guess I mean to say. I'll give away one moment. There's a moment when Superman checks on Martha Kent, his mother, on Earth, after she's been attacked by the villain. And she hugs Superman. Is in costume. She hugs him and she just says, "Nice suit." It's so unexpected that it wound up cracking up everyone in the theater. It was so good and so subtle that it really worked. The acting, again, is really great, and overall, while it won't go down as my favorite comic film, it definitely is much better than I was expecting. There are negatives. The CG and the action can be a little overbearing. It does deviate from the comics a lot, but that was expected, especially with Nolan writing it, because Nolan tries to be loyal to the comics, but he also tries to bring a sense of realism, which he does here. But if you're looking for a great Superman film, you definitely should watch Man of Steel. It's really good. Thank you guys so much for listening, and I'll see you next time.